As the shooting death of Trayvon Martin continues to draw national attention, today we look at another controversial shooting of an African-American male that has received far less scrutiny. On the morning of November 19th, a 68-year-old former Marine named Kenneth Chamberlain with a heart condition accidentally pressed a button on his medical alert system while sleeping. Responding to the alert, police officers from the city of White Plains, New York, arrived at Chamberlain's apartment in a public housing complex shortly after 5 a.m. By the time the police left the apartment, Kenneth Chamberlain was dead, shot twice in the chest by a police officer inside his home. Police gained entry to Chamberlain's apartment only after they took his front door off its hinges. Officers first shot him with a taser, then a beanbag shotgun, and then with live ammunition.
Police have insisted the use of force was warranted. They said Kenneth Chamberlain was emotionally disturbed and had pulled a knife on the officers. This is David Chong, Public Safety Commissioner in White Plains.
The officers first used an electronic taser, which was discharged, hit the victim, and had no effect. While the officers were retreating, the officers then used a shotgun, a beanbag shotgun.
Relatives of Kenneth Chamberlain have questioned the police portrayal of events that led to his death. And they say audio and video recorded at the scene back up their case. According to the family, Kenneth Chamberlain can be heard on an audio recording of his call to the medical alert system operator saying, quote, "Please leave me alone. I'm 68 with a heart condition. Why are you doing this to me? Can you please leave me alone?" Officers allegedly responded by calling Chamberlain a racial slur while urging him to open the door. The audio recording of the incident has not been made public and remains in the possession of the Westchester District Attorney's Office. In early December, Kenneth Chamberlain, a retired Marine, was buried with military honors. The family posted video of part of the ceremony. Several months after his death, the name of the officer who killed Kenneth Chamberlain has yet to be released. The DA has vowed to convene a grand jury to determine if any of the officers should face charges. We invited the White Plains Police Department and the Westchester DA's office onto the program, but they declined to join us or issue a comment. But we are joined by Kenneth Chamberlain, Jr., the son of Kenneth Chamberlain, Sr., the victim, and by two of the family's attorneys. Mayo Bartlett is the former chief of Bias Crimes Unit of the Westchester County District Attorney's Office and the former chair of the Westchester County Human Rights Commission. Randolph McLaughlin is a longtime civil rights attorney. He teaches at Pace Law School. We welcome you all to Democracy Now! Our condolences to your family, Kenneth Chamberlain, on the death of your father. Tell us what you understand happened early in the morning of November 19th.
Well, it's my understanding that, from what I've gathered right now, that my father accidentally pushed his medical pendant around his neck. He could have possibly turned over on it. We don't know. We could only speculate about that.
Why did he wear it?
He has a heart condition, and he also suffered from COPD. And when the pendant was triggered,
you're holding that
yes,
in his hand.
This is his pendant right here. It was triggered, and the medical company, there's a box inside his home. The medical company asked him if he was all right. They didn't get a response, so automatically, if you don't get a response, they send medical services to your house. They inform the police that they are responding to a medical emergency, not a crime. And once they arrived at my father's home, my father did tell them that he was okay, but for some reason they wanted to gain entry into my father's home. I don't know why. And in the audio you hear my father telling them that he's fine.
Now,
he's okay.
This is an important point, that there was audio going on throughout this between the firm and your father.
Correct.
And so much of the activity of the police was caught on this audio.
Yes, it was.
So the box on the wall records everything?
It's actually a box that just sat on his table in his dining room area. It just sat there, and it's connected to the phone company. So if he does trigger it, as I said, you hear a loud beeping noise, and then the operator from their central station will come on, and they say, "Mr. Chamberlain, are you okay? You triggered your alarm. Is everything all right?" And of course, if they don't get a response, they then contact the
Now you were able to hear this audio because the DA's office allowed you to hear it? How did you?
Yes.
But it has not yet been released.
No, it hasn't.
So continue. You hear your father through the door telling the police he's okay. This is about 5 in the morning?
Yes. He's saying that he's okay. He's saying that he did not call for them. But they were very insistent. They were banging on the door, banging on the door, banging on the door. So you hear one of the officers say to him, "Well, you triggered your alarm now." He said, "That's because I want you to leave me alone." And they just kept telling him, open the door, let us see that you're all right." At some point, the door was cracked open because the police officers have a taser that has a camera on it, and it also has audio. So you could see where the door was cracked open. So once you've gotten a visual and you've seen that my father is okay and he's telling you that he's okay, why would you still insist on getting into the apartment? Which is the question that I have. And they weren't responding to a crime. He was sleeping and accidentally triggered his alarm.
And the officers then did what?
Ultimately, after using expletives and racial slurs, they broke down the door. You can see on the video from the taser that they fired the taser at him. And I'm assuming that both prongs didn't go in. He stood about maybe 8 to 10 feet away from them with his hands down to his side. And at one point, you hear one of the officers say, "Cut it off." And it was at that point they shot and killed my father.
They shot him with beanbag also?
Well, we didn't see that. So I can't confirm or deny that.
Did you hear what the police officers were saying, were shouting to him before they took? Did they take the door off the hinges?
They took it completely off the hinges.
To get in?
Yes. There were no orders given to him once they knocked the door down, though, which you would have expected that they would have given some type of verbal command and said, "Get down on the floor, put your hands up, get against the wall." None of those things were said.
And the allegation that he tried to attack them with a weapon first through the crack in the door and then once they got in the house?
I didn't see that. I can't say that it didn't happen, but from the video that I've seen and from what I gathered from the audio, I didn't see where my father attacked them. And he was inside his home. So where was the immediate threat?
What exactly did you hear your father say? He was inside the house as the police are coming inside and the medical pendant company is recording all of this.
I heard several things on there. One thing you hear is my father pleading with them to leave him alone. Excuse me. You hear him asking them why they doing this to him. He says, "I'm a 68-year-old man with a heart condition. Why are you doing this to me? I know what you're going to do. You're going to come in here and you're going to kill me." You also hear him pleading with the officers again, over and over. And at one point, that's when the expletive is used by one of the police officers.
What did they say?
Where they say, "I don't give a F." And then they use the N-word. And then, as I said, ultimately, they bust down the door. And it hurts because, as I said, it didn't have to go to that point. You also hear the operators from the Life Aid company call the police station and say that they want to cancel the call. Mr. Chamberlain is okay. And at one point you hear the officer there at their central office say, we're not canceling anything. They say call his son, contact his son, and they say we're not contacting anyone. We don't need any mediators.
I'd like to bring in Mel Bartlett, because you're not only an attorney for the family in this case, but you are also a former prosecutor in Westchester County. So you're familiar with police procedures in cases like this. I'm struck by the fact that the identity of the police officer involved has not yet been revealed. That's something that's pretty routine in cases like this, but certainly by this time, because we're talking about an event that happened in November.
Absolutely. I think that anybody who lives in the city of White Plains has to ask themselves whether this individual is working right now, and if so, in what capacity. And I think that it's atrocious that that name has not been released, and that the officers involved are not at least on desk duty, some type of modified duty. Looking at it as a former prosecutor, whenever you talk about a use of force, you always look at a use of force continuum, and it's an escalation of force. And generally, police departments have rules and protocols which suggest that you should first start out with a verbal command, if in fact there's even a need to do that. And if that's the least intrusive manner that you can address an issue, and after that it goes generally to light hands application, and it goes up from there to possibly a baton, pepper spray, possibly a taser. And you use deadly force only when it's necessary to prevent deadly force from being used. And in this case, Mr. Chamberlain didn't have a gun. Mr. Chamberlain, when I saw the videotape, did not have a knife when he was in his apartment. You see a 68-year-old man with no shirt on and boxer shorts and his hands down at his sides, and I didn't see any weapon in his hands there. And the other thing that's troubling to me is the fact that a taser was used at all, because you're there for a medical response. You're not there investigating a criminal act. You are there with the understanding that there may be a person who needs medical assistance.
Or a man with a heart condition, no less.
Absolutely. And so if you understand that, to use a taser, which is going to send significant electricity through that person's body, would be at best reckless, and that alone could cause his death. And the thing that's extremely troubling to me is that, again, the police were not there to respond to criminal activity. They went to the gentleman's house at 5 o'clock in the morning to give him assistance. The only reason that he had the life aid pendant to begin with was so that his family and that he would be comfortable that if something was to occur, he would be able to get assistance.
I want to read part of the initial news coverage around the killing of Kenneth Chamberlain Sr. The headline on the News 12 website read, quote, "Officer fatally shoots hatchet-wielding man." The DailyWhitePlains.com website posted an article titled, "Police Fatally Shoot Disturbed Man Carrying Knife." The story begins, quote, "White Plains police say an officer discharged 2 rounds, fatally shooting an emotionally disturbed White Plains man who attempted to bar officers from entering his apartment with a hatchet and then turned towards police with a butcher's knife." Randy McLaughlin, would you respond to this?
Well, first, one of the problems in a wrongful death case like this is you've got a decedent, a person who's dead, and the police initially put out their spin. And that's a spin. That's clearly a spin. The videotape, there's also a videotape of what happened in that hallway. There's an audio tape. There's a videotape of Mr. Chamberlain when they come at him with the taser. This is a clear violation of criminal law and of constitutional rights. In our country, we have a 4th Amendment that says we're supposed to be secure in our own homes. Mr. Chamberlain wasn't attacking anyone. He was in his home. This idea that he attacked anyone with a hatchet is frankly a lie. That's what it is. It's a cover story to cover up what they've done here. And we're meeting with the district attorney this afternoon of Westchester County to press for a full prosecution of the highest crimes in this state. There's a petition, an online petition that Mr. Chamberlain has put out, and we're presenting that petition to her today as well.
It would seem to me that given the fact that they have the audio and the video and they hear their own officers using racial epithets, would immediately say to the brass of the police department, we have a problem here, because that's going to be in court before a grand jury at some point, and that they had a responsibility at that point to begin doing their own investigation of what's going on here.
They have so many problems here. Mr. Chamberlain's niece was in the hallway right at the time when they were banging on the door. She said to them, "I'm his niece." They pushed her away.
She lived upstairs?
On the 5th floor. Another officer who was present had a full head-to-toe body shield that could stop bullets. And rather than secure the situation, let's assume for the sake of this discussion that they had a right to see him to make sure he was okay. Okay, so the door's open. You see him there. Why are you entering his apartment? It's kind of like Zimmerman. You provoke a situation, then you respond to it. Oh, I had to use deadly force to protect myself. No, you provoked the situation. You had no right to cross that man's threshold in his home. That's what led to the problem.
Last week, New York State Senator Susie Oppenheimer wrote a letter to Westchester County District Attorney voicing support for an investigation into the killing. She wrote, quote, "I ask that you do everything in your power to ensure that there is a full and fair investigation of this incident and that all relevant information is presented to the grand jury for its consideration." She has so far been the only state legislator to speak out. Is this right, ma'am?
That's correct. And the thing is, I want to follow on what Randy just said in terms of Mr. Zimmerman. I think that this, and I'm not comparing the two tragedies. I don't like to do that. But what I do think is this. Mr. Zimmerman is a private citizen. This is individuals who are acting under color of law. These are people who are employed by the government to give you assistance. So I think that that's even more egregious than an individual who may exercise terrible judgment or have bias in their heart. And I think that it is a travesty that we don't have any reaction from public officials. And if you simply reverse the roles here, if Mr. Chamberlain had shot at a police officer or harmed a police officer, even if it wasn't with deadly force, if an officer ended up having a bloody nose, in all likelihood, Mr. Chamberlain, 68-year-old, 20-year retired corrections officer and a gentleman who served this country in the Marines for 6 years, would have been charged with a felony assault. And we would have heard from all of our elected officials. They would have talked about him probably in disparaging ways. They would have possibly called him an animal, as sometimes people who are alleged to have committed these crimes are referred to.
Well, I'd like to ask you about this issue that they're talking about bringing this case to a grand jury in April. This happened in November. We're talking now 5 or 6 months later that they're impaneling even a grand jury to discuss the fact, not necessarily to, but possibly to charge someone. But it seems to me a long time to wait for even for a grand jury on this.
Well, it is a good amount of time, and part of it is an investigatory process, but it is a long time. And the biggest concern I have with respect to the grand jury is that we do not have an opportunity to present information to a grand jury in New York State. The only person who does that is the district attorney's office. So we can't even determine whether they're going to play the audio tape at all, or if so, whether it's going to be redacted. So we're really stuck with a good faith offering